What is going on to all my Barry blockheads, my Barry Moores, or my Barry bombs out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, reviewing this third season of Barry, episode 4, which was titled All of the Sauces, an episode in which we see Fuches' plan being put into motion. We see Barry bombs in this episode, and we get a reunion of one couple, only to see another couple break up. We're discussing that and so much more in today's spoiler review, but before we get into the discussion, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel and love early movie reviews, TV breakdowns, and live streams, well, come and join the community today by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And as you all can see on the screen now, if you enjoy what I had to say about this third season of Barry, episode 4, make sure you're liking and sharing this review, but more importantly, sharing your thoughts on this fourth episode in the comments, from favorite moments, least favorite moments, funniest moments, most surprising moments of this episode. And let's also talk about, is this the last time Barry and Jean will share a scene together? Is Barry and Sally really officially over? Cristobal and Hank, are they safe? And Fuches and his plan, will Barry be put down by his victims? Let's discuss that all in the comments below. But hey, we have a lot to break down, so full spoilers ahead as we open the episode with such an emotional moment. And I say emotional because literally we don't even know who these characters are, but within 10 seconds my heart was broken. I feel so bad for this family. We see this wife, and by all accounts seems to be a loving family, a loving husband who we don't know why he was killed by Barry, but I don't think that really matters because as we transition to the scene, she's talking about Kyle, who had a great baseball game. The husband's out of town. He wants to come back home to celebrate with his wife. As we transition to him going to bed, saying goodnight to his wife, only to be shot cold-blooded, dead in the head with a shot by our Barry. And I think that scene, again, it was only 10 seconds, but I'm like, I feel so bad for this wife, and I feel so bad for this family who, again, we don't know what the husband did, but I don't think it matters. It just goes to show you that in that 10-second moment, Barry, took that man's life and took the, again, by all accounts, a loving husband, a loving father away from his family, which it has consequences, which is the big thing that we get with Fuches' plan in this episode. But man, I thought that was such a great way to open the episode. As we transition to seeing her, I assume this is years later, like I want to say maybe 2-3 years later that this has happened, or maybe even longer. She's lifeless. She's, sad. She's upset. All the family photos that we saw are no longer up. Very emotional way to open up this show. Let me know what you all thought about that opening. I thought it was fantastic. As we see, knock, knock, knock on the door. It's Fuches, and he's using one of his aliases, and he wants to talk to this wife about who's responsible for the death of her husband. Whew, I love this show so much. Let's get back into it here. As we transition into the actual conversation, we see that it appears that, again, that it seems that there has been years that have passed away. The wife, she wants nothing to do with this. She just wants to... She hasn't moved on, but she doesn't want to open up that wound again, right? So she dismisses Fuches, and we see him being walked out by Kyle. And again, this is a classic Fuches move, because you can imagine this is probably how he manipulated a younger Barry in regards to getting to do his evil deeds or doing his evil bids. As we see him talking to Kyle, being like, hey, he knows that Kyle is vulnerable. He knows that Kyle is probably not sleeping at night because he misses his dad. So he just simply says, I know who's responsible for the death of your father. And this is where the conversation gets open. He hands him his card. His mom is looking in the window, and she's now starting to think, closure. Maybe this is the opportunity to get the closure that we need to take justice in our own hands because the police aren't doing their job. So Fuches is one evil SOB, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but his plan is being set in motion. He has a couple other visits that he pays in this episode, but getting back into the conversation, mix that with cutting to another victim of Barry, and I'm referring to Jean at this moment, who wants to get him and his family out of Dodge because of course, we know what Barry told him in episode 2, if you don't take my blessings, my gifts towards you of Hollywood, I will kill you and your family. So he's on alert. He's ready to pack his bags and get out of town. As we follow Gene in this episode, we see him in the car with his agent Tom, as Tom tells him that they loved what he did on the episode with him improvising. And shout out to the subscriber and commenter that said, I bet you that after what Gene did, like him going off the cuff and kind of improvising, they're going to want him to come back. And you were 110% correct, because yes, they want him back, but Gene, that is the last thing on his mind, is this Hollywood lifestyle. He's just more concerned about his family, which is such an interesting perspective to look at Gene season 1, the guy that's, teaching people how to act. He's always wanted this Hollywood career, but he's never able to capture that because we find out in this season he's been a jerk in his past before on past editions, but he now has the opportunity, but that's the last thing on his mind. He's finally a family man, and he wants to protect his family based, of course, on his experiences and his interactions with Barry. So I love that juxtaposition. I love that kind of switch in the narrative and the character. But getting back into it all, we see that there is a bomb in place, as we knew from last week, as Barry meets with Hank about the hit job, and he wants him to plant the bomb in the Bolivian's home. And the whole the app with the detonation app and the whole bit and the hilarious and the password. I love the way this show mixes in comedy with the seriousness of the situation at hand. And we're going to talk more about detonation bomb a little bit later, but I love that interaction between those two characters as we cut into the literal metaphor of seeing Barry picking up this bomb and being very cautious and being very, very still and not, being aggressive with the bomb. I took that as a literal metaphor for we've seen Barry this entire season being a literal ticking time bomb, and him holding a bomb, like in a literal sense. He's holding himself because he can blow up at any moment. I might be stretching on that, but I love the, if it is to be true, when my mind's going, the literal metaphor of a bomb holding another bomb. Brilliant writing, if that's the case. Let me know your thoughts on that scene there. As we cut back into the conversation, we see Sally is preparing for a big speech that she's going to be having for the night, which again, another comedy, funny beat. The sweetie, the sweetie moment I thought was hilarious. But going back into a phenomenal scene here, the fact that we see a scene between Joe Montana, Fred Menaded, and Henry Winkler sharing the screen together was like one of my favorite moments this entire show, because they're all legends in their own right. But we see in the actual scene here that we see Joe shows Gene an article in Variety, we see Barry has said some good things about Gene, and is to his surprise that when we hear this article, we hear that Barry tells him that he saved my life. Gene saved my life. And in return, we see that Joe actually helps a lot of veterans, and he wants to invite Gene over to his house. He releases a restraining order. Like I said, every single episode in the season has showed us that Gene has his own dark past. Gene has his own kind of evil side. By no means, I don't think he's killed anyone, but he's been a jerk to a lot of people in Hollywood. So I found that scene to be very interesting. But again, seeing those three Hollywood stars being on the screen together put a big smile on my face. Let me know what you all thought about that in the comments below. But this does not change the fact that Gene is fearful for his life, and he still wants to get out of Dodge. Cutting back to Fuches, who is making his way to a very interesting character that we haven't seen since season 1, and that is Ryan's father. He does the same song and dance he did with the family earlier in the episode. We're like, hey, don't you find it weird how your son died? And more particularly, Barry. What do you think about Barry? Don't you think he's probably doing something wrong? He probably got your son involved, and again, playing all to the stuff that Ryan's dad probably had in his head for these last few years. And he again poses the opposition to him, like, hey, you want to find out where your son's killer is, as he gives him the address. And we later find out that he gave that same family address, leaving it up to their hands to handle justice on their end. Now, I'm very intrigued to see what they do with this angle. Like, if we're going to see both of these families attempting to kill Barry, or Barry's going to have to kill them. That is going to be something very interesting to see Barry facing his victims, and literally in the sense of not them because they're obviously dead, but seeing what he's done in the past and him facing the music. That's going to be such an interesting concept and an interesting idea that I'm very excited to see this season tackle, because Barry, as the years have went on, they're just becoming lifeless, dead people that he doesn't remember, but he has to face the consequences of his actions, which I think is a very deep theme in this season. I can't wait to see where all this shapes up. Let me know your thoughts on what Fuchs' plan has in motion. Let's discuss that in the comments. But getting back into the conversation, Barry ultimately makes the delivery and starts to press the button, all for it not to work. We're going to cut back to that, but let's check in with Sally, who has the moment she's been waiting for on the red carpet. It's her own project. She is just in the heavens right now, and it might be a bit of a stretch, but I found it so interesting paralleling that to Barry not getting the bomb to explode, and we're seeing her career explode like a bomb. I don't know, might be a stretch, but I really enjoyed that kind of narrative there as we see going back to Barry, Berkman bomb app, as he isn't able to get it to work. We see him calling the support line, and of course, in a Barry fashion, Cristobal walks into the house, and this scene here is so fantastic. Let's break it all down as we see Fernando confronts Cristobal about him being disloyal to his daughter as he followed him to his love nest, and he starts to read off the messages to Hank. And I love when this show in particular, the titles of these episodes are very obscure and kind of left field, but I love when the title has context in the show, as we see Fernando reading the text between him and Hank, and he mentions going to Buffalo Wild Wings, trying all the sauces. I think of that Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme where he's like, well, they didn't say the title. I love the writing in the show, but getting back into it all, we see that Fernando gives Cristobal the choice. I either kill you or I'm going to take you to Hank and you kill him. We see Cristobal denies to do so. He doesn't want to kill his lover. And again, I can't stress enough how amazing the writing is, the pacing, the way they set the scenes up. It's absolutely flawless as we see unpredictable and amazing as we see Cristobal is running out of the house, and we see that Barry's on the support line, and they finally, boom, the bomb is successful. I love the writing in the show, and again, I can't stress enough how they set the stage, how it's just so unpredictable, and it all pays off within the show. Such a great way to blow up the situation, right? Cristobal, perfect timing. Now, my question for you all, do you believe that all the Bolivians, including Fernando, are they dead? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's get back into the actual scene as we see Cristobal has survived as he looks Barry face to face. And my question in my head was like, okay, what's going to happen now? And we'll get to that here in a second. But let's check back in with Sally, who's received a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes for her show. And I love the meta nature as she's talking about critics don't matter. Like, this show is obviously a critical acclaimed show. It wins awards, but I love how they just kind of point in like the critics don't matter. And also, when we see her assistant obviously talking about Natalie, what does she say? Not the embargo, but whatever she says. It's just the meta nature of the show, and the comedy is just placed so well. But getting back into the moment, we see that she goes over her speech in front of the audience, and at first, again, going back to a literal sense of bomb, she was kind of bombing her speech, but she's able to turn it around and get the audience back on her side. She reins it back in. She begins to start crying. She's able to gather herself, and she makes her thank you speeches. Number one, we see she thanks Jean, she thanks her agent, she thanks Barry, which we cut to Katie, who didn't like that line, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And of course, she thanks God, last but not least. And we see the stage music coming in, which I thought was great. But what a great moment. And we transition from seeing that to we see Sally giving Katie a huge hug, thanking her, and Kaylee finally lets it out when she tells Sally, you're dating a violent person, and she just tells her that she wants the best for her. And we see the ball rolling in Katie's head, which I'm going to get to my thoughts on the transition, if it was earned, if it was a little bit too quick. But we see her starting to think this is Sam 2.0 all over again. And what Katie said to her, it almost took her to be on the top of the mountain, to be on the top of the, the heavens, all for her to kind of come back down to reality. Like, oh, I need to realize what's going on right in front of me. So I really kind of like that moment, but we'll talk about if it's earned here in a second. But getting back into lovers reunited as Barry takes Cristobal, a wounded Cristobal, back to Hank, Hank is very thankful that Barry has done this. And we're going to wrap up the episode here. Promises, can they be kept by Barry? As we see, Barry is at Jean's house with a gift filled with money, a bag full of money that can change Jean's life forever, as he's given him the money from the hit job. And he promises Jean that he will leave his family alone. And more importantly, he'll never see him again. As we see Jean, as he turns around, Batman style, Barry's out of the house. Jean tells Leo, we're safe and we're going to stay here. But for how long will they be safe? And is this the last time Jean and Barry will see each other? I don't think so, but let me know your predictions in the comments. But let's wrap up the episode. We see Barry goes to Sally's premiere, and they're talking about how amazing the night was. But what was more amazing was she had the best moment of her career. You know who wasn't there? Barry, her abusive, violent boyfriend. She breaks things off. Now, I will say, I thought that this moment would have happened closer to the finale. Now, with this being episode 4, this is the midway point of the season, so I guess it kind of fits in that kind of finale grand turn of the season where things kind of switch on his head. Barry has a huge success taking out Fernando and the elite assassins, but more eternally, more emotionally connected to the character, he loses what is pretty important to him, but he's been kind of ignoring Sally this whole time, this whole season so far. So now he's brought back to reality, and the reality is he was violent. He was an asshole to her, and she, I think, did the right thing. She broke up with him, but I just felt like I would have wanted one more scene with her to realize that. But again, that's how life works. Sometimes it takes you to have that one conversation with someone that you just met, who you've kind of grown a close relationship with, them calling out what is going on in your life. And I mentioned that last week, that I felt like that was Katie's kind of narrative so far. She was going to be that outside perspective to call out the flaws that goes on with Barry's characteristics. So let me know if you feel like it was earned, if it was rushed. I feel like just kind of more thinking about it, it kind of fits within the narrative, especially since we're considering this to be as the 4th episode within 8 episodes. This is the midpoint of the season, and we know good shows, when you have that midpoint, that's where things start to switch in the narrative. So let me know how you all felt about the breakup. Did you feel bad for Barry? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And will they get back together? Let's discuss that, or if this is the right thing. So getting back into wrapping it all up, we see that Barry is in complete shock. He tells her, I just had a bad day, and she doesn't want to hear it. She tells him to get his bags, pack up, and leave. So again, we'll see what happens with that. But the very last scene here, as we break it all down, back with the family that we started with, we see them making a very tough decision after learning that this was Barry who was responsible for the death of their husband and the father of Kyle. They're buying a gun, and we see the gun salesman's like, sweet, because he's sitting there as they're talking about, should we do it, should we not? Like, he just buy the gun. He has no context of what they're talking about. But question is, will they follow through? Will they go to the location of where Fuches gave them? Which, I don't know. You can't trust Fuches sometimes. I don't even know if he gave them the location of where Barry is. Like, I don't know. We'll see what shakes down with all that. And again, do we assume that Ryan's dad also bought a gun, or already has a gun, and is going to go to the location as well? How will it all play out? I don't watch the trailers, so I don't know how next week's going to play out. I like to go in these episodes cold. So please don't spoil anything in the comments if you've seen the trailer. Like, oh, well, this is, it's all fun and games, but please don't take that experience away from me, because I always like to go in these episodes pretty cold. But hey, that's my thoughts on the episode. What happens now? Will these victims come to confront Barry, and will one of them actually attempt to kill Barry, or will it be the opposite way? Will Gene take this money and pursue his acting career now that the show wants him back? Will Sally and Katie just continue to do their show, and Sally's going to push Barry off to the side? And what does that mean for Barry mentally? We already know where his mental is. And now that his girlfriend's gone, how will he react? What now for Cristobal and Hank? Are all the Bolivians off the table? Let's discuss it all in the comments below. I love this show. I love interacting with you, Barry Blockheads, and I thank you all for the support. So before you all leave, again, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, come subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. I would appreciate it, and I think you'll have a good time being a part of the community. But hey, I'm wrapping up this video. Thank you again. Hope you enjoyed the review. Hope you're staying safe. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my previous reviews for Barry. Check out my most latest review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.